Hello everyone, my name is Matthew, and on behalf of the organisers, Oliver Kinross, I'd like to welcome you all to the final webinar of Meet the Contractor Week. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, but with special mention of MyTech and HoloBuilder, our sponsors for today's session. Today is a panel discussion on solving the 5.4 billion productivity cost. How can productivity be increased? There will be plenty of time for Q&A at the end, so be sure to pop all of your questions into the questions box. Before we move into the panel, we just have a short video from MyTech.
Time is money.
23 days to frame up a 4-story building is pretty incredible.
When the old way of doing things just wouldn't cut it, Gurnett Point, Clavalo Construction, and DCI engineers searched for a better solution. They found MyTech.
They were trying to find a solution to get a lateral force resisting system in there that isn't the conventional stick frame walls, because those, we just needed too many on this project and they wanted more openings, which we can't really do with the stick frame walls as easily. And so MyTech was brought on as a great solution to the problem.
After joining forces with MyTech, the team of innovators shaved 2 months off the project schedule.
You can see, because the project went so fast and we don't have the double-sided shear and all that stuff that happens at the outside.
In just 23 working days, they went from here to here.
We were doing a floor every 4 days, basically, is what we did.
When choosing a project partner, you need more than a premier product. MyTech brings expertise.
So with MyTech, we have the engineering background, we have the engineering support, the designers that all jump right in and work with our engineering staff, engineer of record, DCI engineers. So the greatest thing about MyTech is instead of taking this long duration of time to come back and re-engineer something, MyTech jumped right in and worked hand in hand with DCI engineers and ourselves and got the product implemented as a solution for the project.
MyTech brings efficiency.
We went through very quickly and converted this from a conventional system as far as designs go to our frames in a matter of days.
MyTech brings support.
We were able to get this approved through the city in 3 days, just because we had the support of MyTech and the structural engineers, the ones that actually designed the system.
MyTech invests in your project.
And then everything kind of fits exactly where it's supposed to go.
Your success is our success.
The collaboration that happened in that 2-week time frame was, I've never seen anything like it. It was great. Everyone knew what their role was. Everyone knew where they needed to help out. The information, the chain of communication on information, it was great. So without that support, it would have never happened.
Together, we'll find the system of solutions to solve your problems.
People need to look outside of the framing line item and look at it as a total project benefit, and that's the real benefit to all the components and MyTech. My position is, as a framer, I'm not interested in doing any more plywood buildings. If I'm not using MyTech on my buildings, I'm not going to do the project. So that's how much of an impact it has on schedule.
I'd now like to give each of the panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. So Osama, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is well and staying safe. I'm glad that we have the opportunity today to connect. My name is Osama Abdelfatah. I'm an Associate Vice President at AECOM and currently the Program Controls on the LaGuardia Airport Redevelopment Program. My role involves managing all aspects of program controls, including claims, change management, budgeting, scheduling, estimating, reporting, BIM, document controls. I have over 20 years of experience in the construction and project controls. I have jumped on every opportunity to participate in major infrastructure projects within the New York metro area and abroad. Some projects that have shaped my knowledge base and skill sets, including the US 2nd Avenue Subway project, East Side Access, New Tappan Zee Bridge, as well as major programs throughout the Middle East, including in Egypt, Libya, Qatar. I hold the Master of Science in Civil Engineering and from Manhattan College, while I'm currently an MBA candidate as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Osama. And Piyush, can you introduce yourself as well?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. Really glad that I can be on this panel to talk to everybody today. Myself, Piyush, also go with PJ. I'm a project manager with DPR Construction. I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth market, and I'm in the healthcare sector. So I'm a project manager, pretty much handling every aspect of the project, right from bidding all the way to closeout. Right now, finishing up a 7-story parking garage and a 4-story medical office building, and getting ready to start ICU in the next 2 weeks. Before starting healthcare construction, I did my master's in construction engineering project management from University of Texas at Austin. And before that, I used to do high rises. So I've built 1450 feet high tower in India. And then that's pretty much it about it. Looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, both of you. So I think to kick off the panel discussion, we should probably look at a question that a lot of people in the audience are asking, which is, why should improving productivity be on everyone's to-do list? So Osama, do you want to start with your thoughts on that?
Sure. So the simple answer to this question is that by improving productivity, we're actually improving the construction project's outcome. And every year, there's about 10 trillions in construction-related spending globally, and that's equivalent to 13% of the global GDP. This makes construction as one of the largest sectors of the world's economy. So the sector employs 7% of the world working population. That's just a massive number of people. So by improving productivity, we're actually contributing to the success of projects related to our economy, everyday life, and the world around us. Not just that, also poor productivity is actually translated to project failures, loss of time, waste of our limited resources, which is labors, material, equipment, and cost. So the question actually goes through different directions, because productivity, it means money, it means time. And in order to answer this question, let's discuss just few facts about productivity here. According to the World Economic Forum report, the global productivity in engineering and construction has almost remained nearly flat for the past 50 years. And in the US, productivity actually has fallen during the past 40 years. Consequently, poor project management and execution directly correlate with poor productivity and performance. So there's an interesting study also by the Lean Construction Institute suggests that as much as 50% of time, effort, material investment in construction projects does not add value to the final product. And that's a major challenge that really needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. And Piyush, would you agree with what Osama said, and what have been your experiences on why increasing productivity is so important?
Yeah, exactly. Osama brought up some great points. And just to speak on this topic a little bit, I'll go back to the video that we just saw. If you saw, the guy started with, time is money. And that's pretty much the essence of construction. A couple of things going back to it, pretty much the entire video was summarized into how to increase productivity on site. When you're doing construction, you have a lot of variables. We work with Mother Nature. We work with a lot of things which are out of hands, but productivity is dependent on some things which are out of hands and some things which can be controlled. And those are the reasons that we need to focus on, is the things that we can control. Mother Nature, obviously, we cannot control. Other things that are outside of our scope, COVID, things that are impacting productivity right now, that's something we cannot control, but how we work around those things is controlled. So a couple of things comes to my mind about why productivity is essential. The biggest thing is the reduction in the workforce. And when we talked about workforce, there's two big things that come to mind: skilled and unskilled. In construction, there's a huge difference between skilled labor and unskilled labor. So we have a big pool of skilled labor and a big pool of unskilled labor. But the problem in productivity is just having those things meet and meeting the expectations and being in alignment with what the end user wants. The other thing about productivity, or why we need productivity increased, the other thing that comes to my mind is increased expectations. Again, going back to the video, the guy said that they had 4 floors done in 22 days. That's the speed to market that every client wants these days. That's going back to time is money. End user demands good quality product in as less time as possible, and that exactly the only way to get that is improving productivity. And the last thing, just dealing with what we got going on right now with changing Mother Nature, pandemic, and all that, is all the changing environment among us and the adaptability. And the way we deal with these things is by increasing productivity again. So those just a couple of things that comes to my mind, just to add on to what Osama had.
Great points.
Interesting. And so it's interesting you mentioned there about things that are obviously out of your control, like Mother Nature, and obviously at the moment COVID-19 as well. So in the projects that you've worked on previously, have you had any kind of big cases where you have had to battle the elements, so to speak, and how did you deal with that?
So I'll just talk about the project that I just finished, right? So it is 2 buildings, 7-story parking garage and a 4-story medical office building right next to each other in an active hospital. So that's where all the COVID traffic is coming. The hospital that I work for is the COVID capital of Dallas-Fort Worth. It has been made to serve all the COVID patients. So that's where we have the greatest amount of exposure. And at the same place, if you're doing a cast-in-place garage, we had more than 100 guys every day on site. So, I mean, the impact was just huge. And we were still able to finish the project. At the same time, COVID kind of threw a wrench in the plans. We came up with different ways of doing it, but it impacted every aspect, going on from how the work was done. We went into shifts, just different ways of increasing productivity, because once COVID hits, one way of increasing productivity was having people overlap, but obviously that kind of goes away. So it was just finding creative ways of increasing those productivity to still meet the client expectations with what the Mother Nature throws at us.
Yeah, and Osama, I'm sure you have you worked on a project where you likewise have had to have something out of your control while trying to increase productivity?
It's also, I think, just to add to BJ's comments, it's always, there is a moment in the project life cycle that's the project is away from meeting the milestone dates, and it's also require a lot of efforts and collaboration and contribution from everybody just to get back the project on track. How are we actually doing that? And that's in most of the cases in any project. 50% of the project done, we realize that we are just away from the milestone date. How we can actually bring the project back on track. So how to do that? By increasing productivity. There's any areas that we can check in the schedule that we can fix or get the project back on track, or increasing staff or laborers, or maybe we need to just think out of the box. Maybe we dislink some of the areas that originally was on the schedule, the baseline schedule, that we can just resequence things. So this is in most cases of the projects that we face that issue. And also, it always put us to think out of the box and replan again. And I think that will require us from the beginning to adjust our plan to be flexible, be more agile than conventional ways of doing construction. BJ also talked about how we can actually modular construction, or even prefab, and even the concrete, or even some of the work that need to be actually, for example, cast in place and all that stuff need to be ready from the beginning just to make the project get back on track. So most of the project we actually worked on is the same issue. And I think it's mostly after 50%, we always realize that we are far. So that's part of our lesson learned, that we need to actually include in the beginning of the projects, not in the end of the project.
Perfect, thank you. And we kind of touched upon there some of the causes of decreased productivity, such as those factors which are out of your control. But what other causes of decreased productivity do you think there are? And why does it cost the AEC industry so much specifically? So Osama, again, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So there's lots of reasons that actually contribute to the loss of productivity, and it just, I can't even count them. But let's start with a few of them, which is aligning the project purpose. One of the main reasons that projects fail in general and has a major impact on productivity, that's alignment of the project goals. So reason behind that is critical stakeholders are not really sharing the same goal, which is project first. We need to deliver the project. Anything else is just secondary. And how we can actually do that is just by developing a common understanding of the project purpose. It's also essential to have commitment among the critical stakeholders on the program or the project for the purpose of the project, just to be an effective goal. And what else we need to do is just agreeing on means and methods of how we actually gonna meet that purpose goal, and establishing accountability among everybody working on the project. So we have to share the same common goal. We agree on the means and methods to achieve that goal. So project alignment is one of the reasons that most of the project fails, because everybody would be working on a different thing. So it's counterproductive to really do that. Other elements to that is the keeping talent on the project. In this limited resources environment, everybody's fighting over keeping talent or even getting people to work on the same project. So you can't retain people working on the project. So there's a learning curve. You bring somebody, person leaves. You have to train other people to really cover that spot. So companies have hard time to really maintain talent, and that problem is actually, it's two-edged sword, because needs to bring people, train them, maintain them, make them happy, and at the same time, if they leave, you go somewhere else. So you bring somebody else, you train them, and you go through the same cycle. So it takes a commitment from everybody. It takes commitment from the company to invest in people. It takes commitment from the laborers or even for staff that to stay in the company and to see a future in this company, so they stay in the company. So it takes contribution from both sides. So we talked about alignment of the project purpose. We talked about talent. There's also another element, which is the weak project monitoring. We put the plan. After we put the plan or the baseline or even the budget, we forget about everything and we start working. But we don't really track and monitor our plan. Are we still on track? No. How we can actually achieve that is enhance the scheduling side, enhance the cost and control systems, enhance the field verification of how many people are working. Is it sufficient or not sufficient? Are they productive or not productive? So field verification is also important to keep everything on track, verify what's in the field, just to make sure that we are still on track. We're still actually monitoring and tracking our baseline plan. And if we need to re-baseline, it needs to get the commitment from everybody too, that we're gonna follow this plan. And if it needs adjustment, everybody has to contribute to it.
And PJ, have you seen?
That's part of the story.
Thank you. And PJ, have you seen similar things in your experiences about why decreased productivity does cost the industry so much?
I have actually, and I think Osama touched on a great topic, alignment. Let's just talk about it a little bit. So construction, it's a great industry, right? The person who comes up with an idea of what needs to be built, the client, the end user, what do you want to call it, has one thing in mind. It goes through design. A lot of designers get involved, structural, electrical, mechanical, architect, everybody. And then there's collaboration with the end user. And then the GC gets involved, and then the subcontractors gets involved, and then the guy who's actually doing the work. Just the amount of layers that has gone through from the person who actually had a vision to the person who's actually doing it. Alignment is really necessary to get that increased productivity. And I think that's one of the biggest factors that's costing a lot to the AEC industry, is just knowing and making sure those transitions happen smoothly, and the guy who's putting the work is in alignment with, you know, what was the project goal in the get-go, in the beginning. So I think that's one of the biggest thing. The other thing I think that is causing decreased productivity is the amount of rework, the amount of changes. End user have great vision, but at the same time, it's not very clearly defined. And in the process of going through those different stages, it sometimes slips through the cracks and leads to a lot of changes down the line, because the guy who's putting the work actually on site is not, you know, they don't know, they just know what needs to be done, but, you know, but what was given to them, but they don't really know the end goal. So having that end goal defined is really important, and that's costing the AEC industry a lot. And then the last thing, touching to pretty much what Osama had, was, and we talked about it before, is bridging that gap between skilled and unskilled labor. So we have a big workforce with a lot of skilled labor and a lot of unskilled labor, but is that balancing with the need of the industry? So if you need a lot of, say, iron workers, we don't have that many iron workers. Maybe we have a lot of unskilled guys. It's just knowing that balance and training the workforce. And with this changing technology, we talked about prefab a little bit in that video. Doing prefab is the training that's required to do prefab, or, you know, installing prefab is completely different from stick build. So it's just with that changing pace, making sure that the industry is learning, and we have those resources to train the workforce. If we don't have the resources to properly train, that's leading to decreased productivity, and it's a huge cost to the AEC industry in the end. So pretty much I just added on to what Osama had, but big picture items was just, biggest thing was alignment. The second biggest thing was, you know, clean and clear defined end goals of the project, and, you know, increased training with the changing technology, I believe, is what's leading to decreased productivity and costing the AEC industry.
I think it's interesting that you kind of main point that you both mentioned there was that alignment of goals, and how if that's not present, it can lead to, you know, waste of time. Have either of you found or worked on projects where there actually, perhaps with the client, for example, wasn't an alignment of goals, or it was quite a struggle to get to that point? And how did you deal with that and overcome that? So PJ, do you want to kind of start with that, being as you were just touching upon that already?
Sure. So just I'll touch base on my my own you know, experiences. So in healthcare construction, we have a lot of end users, and the amount of, you know, changing in the staff that goes through is huge, and the technology is changing. So I'll just talk about a simple patient room, right? When it went through design, there was a different clinical expert who was involved. And then over the period of time, the technology changed and the clinical expert changed. So the end goal kind of changed, you know, the final product changed. If you're talking about a head wall, a patient head wall, you know, the med gases that you needed went in a different spot. So if everybody's not aligned with what was there in the beginning, what changed, then in the end, and if it is not taken through all the steps, then in the end, there's rework, which obviously time is money, so we don't have time for rework ever in our schedules. But that's what alignment will be for me, is just making sure that, you know, it passes through one person to the other person as the project progresses.
And same to you, Osama. Have you worked with a client where there was that disalignment in goals, and how did you overcome that situation?
I think most of the projects I worked on, we take a very proactive approach from the beginning, is to discuss with the client his expectation from the beginning, just to make sure that we all align on the same purpose and how we can achieve it. And so just managing your stakeholders' expectation was very important from the beginning. And right now with the technology and everything together, we make sure that we break it down by communication, talking with the client all the time, just making sure that whatever we are producing is exactly what the client is looking for. And just to open up every discussion or maybe break down every element to linear details to just make sure that the same understanding is there from the beginning and throughout the life cycle of the project.
Perfect. Again, thank you both. And so we've now kind of looked at why improving productivity should be on everyone's to-do list and some of the causes of that. So perhaps now we should talk about how people can actually increase productivity. So what methods and tools would you suggest that people can implement to improve productivity in their workforce? Is there any specific software that you found useful or any specific practices? And Osama, again, do you want to just go with that one?
Sure. So the answer to this question for productivity loss, it just lies between two major elements here, which is the human element and technology. As PJ mentioned, it's just a challenge to retain talent and bring skilled labor. How actually they spend time between the unskilled labor and skilled labor and the transfer of knowledge between both of them. So attract and retaining good employees, and that will increase productivity, and avoiding waste on hiring and the new team members and the learning curve. So you're avoiding that step by maintaining a good labor force. Also investing in recruiting candidate at the early stage of the project so they can learn and they grow with the project or even within the company, and providing them with up-to-date training with the skills to just run the business, and investment in leadership as well. So that's for the human element. The second element, which is we are lucky that we live in this time, is technology. Right now we have lots of areas that there is a lot of investment in technology and construction, including even drones. So drones now is in our industry, and that's actually eliminate lots of work. Even the survey times becomes 40 times faster than before, just by implementing the drones in the construction. So it's faster. The cost can be reduced by 40% as well, and we can even share the data with everybody, even the client. So there's no miscommunication now. Collaborative effort between everybody working on the project, and everybody has the same information at the same time. So that's a good step. Also, BIM, or building information modeling. It's considered by others and everybody actually. It's the future of construction. It creates a communication and collaborative efforts between the team members, enable enhanced collaboration through visualization throughout the project lifecycle, and it improves resource management capabilities. Also, 4D modeling and integrated system between, in general, integrated project control system. So integrating scheduling, integrating BIM, integrating the cost by 4D, 5D modeling. That's very important. It creates a good spirit within the team. Everybody knows everything. We go follow the sequence of the project. What's first, what's second, what's third. If there is any issues, how we can actually communicate that to the client, or even between ourselves, or even between the prime and the subcontractors. So it creates a good communication and collaboration between the teams and everybody working on the project. There's also investment in materials, so modular construction that helps minimize the material use, efficiency for the materials, eliminating all the on-site variables. The prefab, I think we talked about a little bit, that's reduced site waste, extremely faster installation. It reduced the labor and the site work. It provides a better quality for the installation too, for the materials. So these are part of the technologies and the human elements that we can invest in just to avoid the loss of productivity on the construction side.
And PJ, same to you. Have you found any tools or methods useful for increasing productivity, either with yourself or in your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think Osama pretty much touched on everything, but I'll just elaborate on it. Just a couple of things that has worked for us in the past, and it still does, is one of the biggest thing Osama touched on is prefabrication. So in the beginning, we talked about Mother Nature a little bit, right? And things that are outside of our control. So if you can just take everything out in the dynamic world, out in the open, in the sun, in the rain, among traffic, and you can build the exact same thing in a controlled environment where it's more safe, it's more, the productivity increases because the climate is controlled. You actually, the guys really like going to work and having a very, pretty much like manufacturing, having a continuous chain of work. So prefabrication will be one big tool, and it's being used in the industry a lot more than it was 10 years ago, and that is the future of construction is what it looks like. So that will be one of the method, and the other one will be standardization. So that's also one thing that across the industry people are realizing that we need to standardize things more instead of having one-of-a-kind thing. It sometimes helps to standardize things, makes it faster, increases the productivity, reduces the cost, reduces the waste. So that's also one thing that's coming in handy. And another thing that Osama touched on was virtual construction. 3D, 4D, 5D. 3D with the client, making sure what actually, it's hard for everybody to understand the two-dimensional drawings. So actually putting that in a 3D model format where the end user can actually see and make sure that what is being built matches their vision, and then adding the 4D dimension to it, where we can put some timelines into it and make sure that it's easier to work with a model and come up with creative solutions rather than when you have things up on site on a crane. So adding that 4D dimension to it, and then taking it to the next level, adding 5D to it, adding cost. So now you got 2D, where if the designer has created plans. You got 3D, where you got end user coming in and looking their vision turning into an actual three-dimensional model. And now you throw 4D into it, in which you are actually building it in timeline virtually, and you're actually seeing how things are coming together. You're seeing how the logistics are working out. And then on top of that, you throw 5D in it, and in 5D, you're putting cost. So you can see how the cost, how your monthly pay applications will be, where you can save money, where you need money, how your cash flow will be, and all that good stuff. So I think that will be a lot of things that we are already doing as an industry, and things that everybody's working on to improve as future of construction. And then just some other tools that are used or are really helpful, on daily construction is things like Last Planner. The guy who are actually on site, having some kind of visual aid for them. Like the guys, when they come to our job site, the first thing we have outside is just a dry erase board in which we have plans and we have color codings of where work will be, what work will be, who will do what. And we have pull planning, where the guys can actually huddle up every morning, talk about who's doing what, so they're not in each other's way. So those are some kind of tools. Basically, it all boils down to communication, right? Everybody talks about communication and how that's the biggest problem and also the biggest solution for what we do. If everybody knows what needs to be done, it's easy to get it done. The problem is just that communication breakdown that happens from each step to the next step. And then if you can solve problems like that by having daily huddles on site, having Last Planner system in which the guys, the crew actually installing gets together, they know about all the changes. There's a way of color coding it, making it easy for the people on site to put it together, and also the client. So virtual construction on the client side, and color coding the pull planning schedules on the workforce side. Those are some tools that are coming in handy and being used extensively to reduce the loss in productivity that we have seen in the last few years.
Yeah, thank you both. And so we've actually had a few questions while we've been talking come in from the audience as well. So it'd be good to get through a few of these questions before we finish up. So one of the questions we've been asked is, do you think that this always on mindset we currently live in, due to the internet, email, Zoom calls, etc., aids or hinders productivity? Is being able to turn off from work important? So PJ, do you want to start with that one? And maybe you've had similar experiences where you've been had loads of emails or Zoom calls cropping up recently.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so technology is amazing too, right? It can increase productivity or it can decrease productivity. So emails, Zoom calls are also being used as communication chain to get everybody on board. But at the same time, those are also things that are or can be exploited to get your mind diverted real quick. So yeah, I would say that technology use it is really important. And the biggest thing that comes to my mind when we talk about diverting your mind from work is safety side of things. So one thing in the productivity is also keeping the safety in mind. So technology can also be a big hindrance, and it can also be a big plus to what we do. It's just managing it. So like in our job sites, it's not allowed that you cannot have music playing. Do I like music when I'm working? Yeah, but if I'm working on site, do I want to be, do I want my mind to get diverted when I'm working up on heights? No. So just that's what I would say about technology is, yeah, it can be something that we can use wisely, or it can be something that can divert us from what we actually need to focus on.
And since you, Osama, have you had working days where you think you've been distracted by a lot of Zoom calls or team calls or emails that have stopped you from getting on with like important tasks that you need to get done?
I think it's just part of what we struggling with every day. It's meeting after a meeting after a meeting, especially COVID-19 get most of us actually working from home, or we go to the office in just not every day. So everything now is the communication is through Zoom or WebEx or other stuff. So we have a meeting and we prepare for a meeting with another meeting. So sometimes for me to manage my team, just to make sure that we're always on the same page. So I have to collaborate with them. Sometimes we have working sessions. So in order to get things done, on the cost side or the schedule side, we have to do everything through meetings. So I see that's actually enabling our work to happen, because with the situation we are in, this is the only way to really collaborate with your team. Just make sure that you get your message to the other side, same way with the client. But as PJ mentioned, sometimes it's just a distraction. You can't really all the time be on a call or be on texting or even on a WebEx. So it's not productive if you are working on the safety side. So you can't be really thinking about a million things or even texting while you're working. That's really it's very dangerous and it's not safe. So it depends on how you actually employ the technology to help you. It helps you when you're actually using, for example, building in information modeling for visualization, getting the message to the client. We all agree, we see exactly the plan is now, it's a model, we can see it when we're going to do this work, how much is going to cost us. So it's enabling the collaboration between the team and the client, but at the same time it can be distracting as well.
Yeah, so another question we've had come in, which is quite an interesting one, is that other countries have looked at decreasing the working week from 5 days to 4 or similar such measures to increase productivity. Do you think this would work in the US industry? So PJ, do you want to start with that one? Do you think maybe lowering the working hours would increase productivity, or would that be more of a hindrance?
So I can see it on both sides. So on the office side, so where we have people like BIM, where we have accountants, project managers, people who are actually spending a lot of time collaborating and working in front of their computers. I think it's a great thing if we can figure out a way to do it in 4 days, because then that gets you freshened up. You're not spending that much time. It helps you on the freshening up side, and you're actually more efficient. But at the same time, getting those things on side, there's just, we talk about if you can get 5 days worth of work done in 4 days. So it started from, can we get 3 years worth of project in 2 years? and then 5 days worth of work in 4 days. So it also goes back to like I'm in Texas, so it's hot out here. So the guys, they really want to start at 5 in the morning so they can stop at 3 in the afternoon. So those kind of factors also come into play. So I would think I think it's a very big industry to look at an overall thing, but there are certain facets where it can really help. Getting to a 4-day work period, but there are some facets where we have to go to 5 or 6 days just to make sure we are being safe. With COVID, that was one of the things we had to do, was we had to increase the work week. That in a way it sounds counterproductive because you're exposing more, but in a way you're not exposing more, you're exposing less because you are having crews staggered, and the only way to meet that timeline is by extending the amount of time, so going in different rotations and shifts, increasing your work period. So I would say that's what I think about it is, some facets it's really nice to go to 4 days, but some facets it's nice to stick to conventional 5 or 6 days.
And same for you, Osama. What are your thoughts of decreasing the working week?
I take 4 days. No, really. I think it depends on the industry itself. So construction, I think it depends on if you're in the field or you are working in the office. So if you work in the field, I would take that you work 8-5. 5 days, 8 hours. I think it's better. You can be focused. You'll be refreshed. So you don't work overtime or you're killing yourself with more than 8 hours. For the office, I think some of the companies, they actually do it in the summer. So sometimes you're allowed to work 4 days, 10 hours. I think it works sometimes in that sense, but in the field, I prefer that's really the 8 hours, 5 days. That's more to keep you fresh, and you'll be able to work more than that. Because the field is more safety. You don't want to work over that 8 hours, otherwise you'll be not focused.
All right, and obviously a big thing that's impacting, well, everyone at the moment is COVID. So another question we've had is, how do you think COVID will impact the industry's productivity levels in both the short term and the long term, especially regarding the balance of labor supply that PJ mentioned? So PJ, being as you mentioned in that question, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I mean, it's common knowledge. COVID threw a wrench in everybody's plan. Nobody's spared from this thing, right? So I think in the short term, it was really disruptive. It impacted a lot of projects. It changed everybody's projections. One big thing about productivity is projecting things and making sure you're monitoring to align with those projections. So it threw a big wrench in all the projections, where who was supposed to be, it all changed. But I think in the long term, looking at on the positive side of this, is I think it's helping on the productivity side. When we mention things like prefab, now people are focusing more at how can I get the same amount of work done with less exposure? How can I reduce the amount of people I need to have on site at one particular time to not have the people exposed, a lot of people in the same place? And we are also looking at creative ways of, how much can you get built outside, bring it on site to reduce exposure of people on site. So short term, yeah, it kind of threw a wrench in everybody's plan. It changed a lot of things for, pretty much everybody. But in long term, it has also taught us a big lesson that you have to be prepared for the unknown. You cannot predict Mother Nature, so you have to always keep on coming up with ways to stay away from Mother Nature as much as possible and stay productive. And also, having that worst case plan and having that in place in case something goes wrong. So in the long term, those are the things that we as an industry are learning from it, and I think it will be a great thing to have it as lessons learned and improve the productivity moving forward.
Thank you. And this next question is directed at you, Osama. So you mentioned how technology like drones can improve productivity, but do you feel like there is a bit of a fear of automation due to the idea of robots replacing people? And how would you balance the need for increasing productivity and maintaining jobs?
Okay, so I think that's a very good question. Is technology will be able to actually replace people? I think there is a critical point here. Is actually we need to use the technology not to replace people, but actually to save people from certain work and take them from more labors to more brain work. Invest in technology that can replace the work that technology can do, and take us human to different areas that we can be innovative. We can actually use human in a different areas that really needs more thinking, more collaborating efforts, communication, all that stuff that technology cannot do. It can help us. It can help us to close the gap, as PJ mentioned, but it doesn't really replace human. So, for example, drones can reduce the time for survey. Instead of one person is working 40 hours, we can do that work in 1 hour. So reduce that drastically. However, you still need the person who can operate that technology. Yes. So you're actually using human in some areas that really help the technology to enable the technology to help us, and instead of replacing the human. But I think the second question is, are that going to reduce the human labors? Now, in that sense, we're going to be working 8 hours, 8 hours, 4 days, instead of 8 hours, 5 days. So we'll reduce the time for us, but we're investing in us doing something more useful than just repetitive work. So using our human brain to do something more efficient, and that will help us to really do something better.
Perfect. And just one of the second to last question before we finish up and run out of time. Do you think the industry has an outdated mindset of working hard means increased productivity? Should we be focused instead on working smart? And how would you go about changing this mindset? So Osama, do you want to chime in on that one?
Sure. I think right now we are ready for working smart more than just working hard. That technology is helping us to do that. Instead of working 10 hours, we can work a couple hours and using the technology to do so. I see lots of technology now is enabled in our construction field. BIM, drones, I think drones just can get implemented in construction just a few days ago in New York. So that's helping us to really enable construction in our field. So we are ready to work smart, work less hours, focus more, make things even better, and focus more on quality instead of quantity.
And would you agree with that, PJ?
I sure would. I sometimes joke about it. We are working hard towards working smart. So it's just, leveraging technology. The good and bad about technology is it changes. It keeps on evolving. And the person who evolves it is human. So we are all looking at ways of improving things. And, the way to do it is keep working harder towards, working hard. And these things like Osama talked about before is BIM, building information modeling. That's working smart. Did we just get to it? No, we worked hard to get to it, and we started from 3D to 4D to 5D. Now we are moving towards getting it to the next level. So that working smart to working hard to working smart.
And so we've got time for just one more question. So this might be a bit of a tricky question. But do you think there are any lessons that can be learned from other industries that would be applicable to the AEC industry regarding productivity? So again, PJ, have you got any ideas about how other industries have increased productivity that could be applied here?
Sure. I mean, a lot of studies have been done in this field, right? Lean industry has learned a lot and brought a lot of principles from shipbuilding, from manufacturing, making more of a predictable workforce and having it more of, instead of just constructing in a dynamic environment, just learning from industries who have accomplished that in the past. And those are the lean principles we have learned from, right? We have learned wastage, reducing wastage, standardization. So those are the things that we are learning from other industries. and we need to keep on learning, and we need to just look for things. I think COVID will help us in a way to look for more alternative ways of doing things in other industries. So we have learned from the shipbuilding industry, we have learned from the car manufacturing industry. Now we are learning from other industries on how we can reduce the exposure. Construction in the end is a manual, it's a manual job. It's a human intensive industry, and we are looking at ways how we can reduce exposure and still get the same amount of work done from different industries. So I think that was a great question, and industry is always looking at it. In 90s, we looked at ship industry, and moving forward, we are looking at other industries and looking at how we can build those technologies and apply it to construction.
Okay, and just to finish up with the webinar, Osama, same question to you as well.
So I believe that the construction by itself is not away from the rest of the industries in the world. So one of the things that really helped construction the last few years is actually the project controls. And project controls is the heart of project management in general. So there's lots of innovation in the project controls. And one of that is the data warehouse and the Power BI. All that stuff, it actually enhance the communication and get everybody to understand what's going on, and even the dashboards and how to see exactly the performance and the health of the project. That actually helps everybody to understand if we are on track. There's lots of productivity, how we can actually get the project back on track. So it helps us a lot is understanding what's going on the project, and if there's an issue, we can proactively take the right approach to resolve the issues.
Perfect, thank you. So we have run short of time, I'm afraid, but I'd like to thank both of our speakers, Osama and PJ, and everyone who's joined us in the audience today. So everyone will receive an on-demand copy of today's session via email within the next 24 hours. And this was the final webinar in Meet the Contractor Week, and we really hope you've enjoyed all the panel discussions and virtual networking events that have taken place since Monday. And if anyone has any feedback or further questions, please drop us an email and we'll come back to you as soon as possible. Keep an eye out for our next virtual events. So we've got Midwest Build Week Online taking place in January, and also New York Build Week Online coming up as well. And both of these events are free to register for, and you can also indicate your interest in sponsorship opportunities, speaking, and more on their respective websites. I'd like to say a final thank you to all of our sponsors who have joined us for Meet the Contractor Week. And to close out the webinar, I'd like to leave you with a video from Hollow Builder. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hollow Builder makes site documentation fast and easy. Simply capture your site with a standard 360 camera connected to the Hollow Builder JobWalk app. The Enterprise dashboard provides a high-level overview of all projects. By selecting a project, you can see your construction site in 360 degrees. You can also travel through time to see the different captures throughout the construction and compare your progress side by side. You can also upload renderings of your 3D models to compare them to progress photos. Augment your 360-degree photos. Highlight specific areas and link them to BIM 360 issues or Procore RFIs and observations. The affected area is directly accessible from within BIM 360 or Procore. All 360 markups within a project can be managed within the 360 markup list. Connect your projects to other favorite technology providers, including Bluebeam, PlanGrid, and more. You can even take on-screen measurements within 360-degree photos using the Measurements tool. To cover your reporting requirements, simply export PDF reports to your 360-degree documentation that includes your photos, location information, and more. In the Enterprise dashboard, you can monitor activities, project status, and more. After closeout, you can download a view-only offline copy of your project. This version can be viewed years later within the offline HoloViewer